Riley, welcome. How are you, man?
Doing well, doing very well. We had a busy day in Charlotte short-term rentals. I don't know how many of you looked at or tuned into the UDO listening session. A lot to unpack there, so I won't even go into that right now. Interesting day, we'll say.
So today we're talking really about angry guests, negative reviews, really how to handle those from a business perspective. Something that if it hasn't came up yet, it's going to come up. People are going to give bad reviews. They are going to be angry with their stay for whatever reason. It could be something intentional or completely unintentional. So we're really going to just go through a couple different scenarios and keep it a super, super high level with what to do essentially during the stay with the angry guest and essentially post-stay in kind of the review process. So if you haven't heard, reviews are super, super important. So there's a lot of different scenarios and different ways to essentially get great reviews. But it all comes down to essentially when they're in the property and they're staying at the property, how to essentially accomplish, essentially talking them off the ledge and then getting to that review period where you don't have to worry about it. You've already solved the problem and then everything's hunky-dory. So, Riley, before we jump in, anything to add or anything you want to kind of touch on before getting into the details?
No, I love that. I think what you just basically said, the first step to combating a bad review happens during the stay. It's addressing the issue. So I think that's an important segment to talk about when addressing angry guests and bad reviews is what happened in that situation. You got to understand things happen because there are humans. There's a human error element in your operation. Things happen just at properties. So be open-minded that your guest is going through something you need to assist, but also realize that really anything can happen at a time at a property. So you want to set that expectation with the guest that this was obviously not intentional, but you want to move forward with this forward thinking and try to get this corrected for them to improve the rest of their stay. You want to basically get the tone across that you do everything you can within reason to make this whatever problem that they're having go away, whether it's from just setting expectations, answering questions, all the way to getting a vendor out there, going out there yourself. You need to be clear with them about what your action is and what you're doing to help them. Set the expectation the right way and then follow up on those action items that you actually set. And doing that and communicating very clearly through that process is your first guard against negative reviews. And I can't say enough, things happen. So you need to set that expectation. Nobody's going to be happy. An example that I can give you is a shower handle broke off a shower and rendered it usable. So obviously that's not something we could have been able to foresee. We have to set the expectation with the guests that we're going to get a vendor out there as quick as we can. I can't tell you at this moment when that'll happen, but I'll do my best to get it out there as soon as possible. And then we'll go from there. So that's going to be a big step in gaining confidence from your guests that you actually care, because there are a lot of hosts out there that don't, and that you're going to do everything you can to solve the issue that they're having.
In that specific scenario, it happened, I think, on like a Saturday night. Everybody was working. They were on vacation. So I think the earliest we could get was Monday morning, or maybe Sunday. It's all about being professional. We're professional hosts. Do everything you can within reason, of course. Sometimes where you can only do as much as you can. We always like to give the guest options versus like essentially picking a decision for them. So it's like, oh, hey, look, we can't get anybody out there tonight. Does Monday morning work, or did you just want to use the extra shower for the rest of your stay? So giving the guest options and letting them essentially choose and dictate where the solution comes from.
It's not satisfactory for you, and the situation is severe enough, canceling the reservation for the remainder of the trip and refunding the rest of the days, things like that, letting them drive where it set the level of severity and how they want to handle this kind of situation.
You obviously want to fix the issue first, that put forward. Nobody wants to cancel a reservation or do any type of refund. But in the end, like, you want to make sure that the guest is happy, you're doing everything that you can, and making sure that it's really all about the review, making sure that you're doing everything you can to continue that 5-star review quality. That being said, if you give a guest an inch, they'll take a mile type deal. So, making sure you're set with your policy and make sure you have the options laid out and you've thought through every possible scenario. But really, during the stay, staying focused on the situation and keep it moving, that's a really, really important point. They'll tell you 1,000 different things that are wrong, but make sure you're honing in on like the main issue and solve that main issue as quickly as possible.
And it's the shotgun method some. So to kind of close this out in our experience, that they're going to say 1,000 things as fast as they can unintentionally, be very disorganized with their thoughts, usually kind of emotional. You're kind of the coordinator here to make sure that all the information that they're trying to communicate gets basically received, cataloged, and assigned and responded to, so that you can, all the stresses and all the problems that they think that they're having need to be addressed. So sometimes just kind of calming the conversation down and working through a list of things and then addressing them afterwards, it goes a long way. You can do everything that you in your power to make the stay better. You can improve it. It could be bad, whatever. You're still going to have some negative reviews. It's going to happen. You're going to get in that situation where you have an angry guest and a bad review, and you need to be able to address that situation as well. Say, if you've never had a bad review, then basically what you're doing is caving to every guest, whatever they'd like at the time. And that's a strategy for some people, but oftentimes, I think that there's a balance between catering to guests every beck and call and then setting expectation and living up to what your policy is, basically due to your fiduciary duty to the owner as well. So what can we do, Caleb? I'll segue with that into what can we do with negative reviews?
We run this as a business. Not every host runs it as a business. Some guests just be like, okay, yeah, whatever you want, like we'll do it. You want a full refund? Sure, that's fine. We run it as a business because we do have the fiduciary duty to our owners and investors. We have numbers and metrics that we need to hit on a monthly basis to make them essentially whole on the end. So we run it as a business, and we truly believe that most hosts should. If you're like a one-off host and you want to kind of give that guest whatever they want, that's fine. Take the philosophy of running it like a business. Transitioning from like during the stay, making sure you're doing everything you can during the stay. And then once the stay is over, that's when the 14-day review period starts. Riley, talk to us a couple different high-level points about the review period and what people can take away here and learn.
If I can say it even in layman's terms as simply as possible, just be professional. I think it's common sense. I see reviews when I look at certain guests and I just see that interaction with other properties. And I think, wow, professionalism just flies out the window as soon as things aren't hunky-dory for both sides. And frankly, other guests don't like to see that. If you're arguing with a guest through comments and reviews, it doesn't look good for you. So be professional. Look from their point of view, be professional. There's a few other specific things to mention in these, but really just mainly, first of all, just be clear, concise, and professional, and make sure that you're responding to reviews and not just the negative ones. You kind of want to set a pattern that you're that superhost level. You have that interaction with every guest. So most of these reviews, positive or negative, you should just get a response out to. That way, when you do respond to the negative reviews, which are very important to respond to, it doesn't look out of touch or out of place. But so usually just 2 or 3 sentences. The main thing is to mention that you've addressed the problem, if it's here, but just politely say, for example, we did everything we could to try to get it done during your stay. If you weren't able to, or I'm glad we were able to get it done the next day for you. Things like that lets other people know that if there's an issue with the property, that 1, you jumped on it and acted quickly, and 2, you're able to get it resolved. And if you weren't by the end of their stay, that it's resolved now for any future guests. So that's how we address negative reviews and reviews in general. And then there's also the route of trying to get reviews taken down. It depends on certain things. You may be able to get some of them taken down, but they're pretty strict. There are some specific rules. I'll let Caleb if you want to get into that.
This is another point that we see a lot in the industry with the more of the kind of one-off. If it's a bad guest and maybe there's some damage, the host gives them a 5-star review because they don't want to come off as the bad guy. But the problem with that is you're not protecting other hosts if you're not giving them an honest and really a thorough review. Like if you have somebody damage something, for example, they put holes in the wall or whatever, like write it in the review. Hey, this guest was great to communicate with, but there was an issue with them putting holes in the drywall. We're hopefully having to handle that. But what that does is that gives future hosts the idea of like had the bad guest where they damage something or something just goes terribly wrong. I'm sure if another host wrote a review that was honest, there were some things you could do before that host steps into your property. So giving an honest and a fair review, making sure you're stating facts, not emotion, is a really big part as well. If you're saying, oh, he hurt my feelings, take the emotion out of it. Be like, okay, look, this happened. Making sure you're stating the facts there.
Rising tide raises all ships, right, Caleb?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. So you're helping your other hosts out, and to relay this back to something that's important right now, this UDO, a lot of the reason for some of these changes is the nuisance that some short-term rentals can cause, the bad apples, the people who aren't managing professionally, doing the right thing to protect the community and the neighborhood. But one way that you can help everybody out in that situation is by mentioning if a guest has been unruly or bad, and you don't let people know, then it's possible that they're going to continue to stay and be a nuisance and annoyance and be part of the problem. So be part of the solution to let people know about these bad guests that aren't just being honest about them. They are about you. Do you think they would hold back for a second if the stay wasn't satisfactory to them? The answer is no. So just be honest.
Yeah. Typically, if you can't read the review until the guest writes a review about you, or you can't read their review until you write your review about them. So there's really no point in not being honest, because it's already done at that point. They've written their review, you've written theirs, and then Airbnb releases it, for example. So there's really no point in not being honest in those scenarios. With that being said, obviously put yourself in the guest's shoes, see it from their perspective, where I'm sure as a host, you've probably been to plenty of Airbnbs and short-term stays before. Like, make sure you're seeing it from their perspective. Maybe this is their first Airbnb stay. So give them the benefit of the doubt, but also be realistic and reasonable with the guest experience too.
Absolutely. First step in communicating, really, first step in any issue that we have is communicate with the guest, ask them about it, talk about it. It should be open line of communication that flows respectfully and professionally, and things go a lot better that way. I think people pick up from the fact that we're upfront in our expectation. We're going to hold people to them, and we'll discuss it if not, and we expect to be treated the same way.
Another point is during the review period, respond to all the reviews, positive, negative. I mean, that goes for any business. And just respond to all the reviews, making sure you're, honest. Like, let's say we could go 1,000 different scenarios, but making sure you address the problem head on versus just kind of skirting around. That will show other guests that, okay, this host actually is trying to get better and they're solving these problems. Nobody's perfect. We make mistakes. Like, everybody's going to make a mistake. Like, for example, the other of our properties forgot to buy a trash can. It was like, how do we forget that? Like, that was missed in some aspect. Luckily, it didn't get to the guest. We called it before, but things happen. Nobody's perfect as much as you can. Make sure you're just be a good person. Anything else, Riley, that we may have missed?
We hit on getting reviews taken down. There are some things to look for in reviews where you can contact the channel, the RVO, Airbnb, etc., and have a review taken down. There are guidelines by each of the channels that are pretty clear. In my opinion, it's difficult to prove. They're all relatively ambiguous, but some of them are more or less cut and dry. Mentioning like an air cover or resolution center request is typically a no. Saying they wouldn't refund my money, example. They charged me for an item, stuff like that. You can make a good case for, but sometimes it's worth the time trying to get in contact with somebody at the channels if the review is bad enough. So that's a route you can maybe try to go in certain situations. But read the review guidelines, and that'll give you an idea if you have a leg to stand on.
Pro tip there, not something that we've experienced personally, but we've got a buddy that does the same thing. He called Airbnb, talked to a rep, couldn't get the review down. It was blatantly against their review policy. Literally hung up the phone, called back, got another person to take it down. So pro tip, take it for what it's worth. Use the multiple Airbnb support specialists to your advantage. If you don't get the right answer the first time, like, call back and see if you can get it second, third time. Another thing I heard from a podcast was, I don't think we've spoke about this, Riley, but like, let's say the guest calls you or you call the guest and they say something over the phone, making sure you're getting that documented on the platform is really, really important. Like, for example, we had a scenario where the guest was like, I'll give you a 5-star review if you give me my cleaning fee back. That's a big no-no, to where they essentially hold our money hostage for the cleaning fee for a 5-star review. So we essentially just brought that on platform to be like, hey, just wanted to confirm what we talked about on the phone. If we give you the cleaning fee back, you will give us a 5-star review. That right there, it's essentially against their review policy. Like a guest can't hold money hostage for a review, essentially. So we were like, okay, this is something that we know that we could get taken down. Obviously, it didn't happen, but just being smart and diligent and knowing the system and how it works and really how to maximize from a host perspective and doing it the right way. Like that's the goal here. I don't think we had any questions in the group. Yeah, other than that, I appreciate you watching.